Google search CrackU free CAT mocks. Click on the first link. You can attempt 3 latest mocks in the actual exam interface. After completing the test, you get detailed solutions, analysis, and percentile along with your scorecard to gauge your All India performance. Click on the solutions to get video solutions from our expert faculty.
Hi friends, welcome to CrackU's video series. In this particular video, we'll discuss the verbal section of DashCat 8. So let's get started. So the DashCat 8 I felt was on the whole a moderate difficulty section. It was not very hard, especially there were many RCs which could easily be done. So when you have two RCs which can easily be done, I would say that it is almost something that you can do pretty well in. Now you won't be able to massively score in it, but you should not score poorly in it, given that there are easy questions that are there inside the section as such. So let's take a look at each RC and let's see which ones you should have definitely attempted, which ones were slightly on the trickier side. So the first thing that first RC that I discuss is the European Super League one. There are a lot of students who feel more comfortable with sports RCs, but be careful. What is the topic on the surface might not be the actual topic. If you see the RC as such, on the surface it is a discussion or a passage is about sports, but the arguments are of an economic nature. The arguments mostly are talking about cartelization as such. So it's not a very simple sports based passage as such. It takes a more academic view at sports as such. So because of the fact that there are essentially economic theories or economic arguments that are made in the passage, it's a slightly tricky passage as such. Now most of the questions in this particular RC were inference based. Basically you had to think and understand what the author is trying to say through the passage to actually understand. Whenever the author is like, if you see a passage like this which is full of opinions, very opinionated, words used were like eviscerated corpse of European Super League. When you have something which is so opinionated, it generally is about you have to understand the emotions of the author, you have to understand the opinions of the author, because in such kind of RCs that matters far more than the individual arguments that the author actually makes. Understanding why he is saying that, understanding the emotions behind saying that is very important, because that helps you remove a lot of options which are not in line with his motivations. So in this particular case, the author was pretty angry towards the European Super League, just that idea of forming European Super League, about trying to do that to ordinary football, and you can also see his tone towards capitalism also. So when you understand that the emotion of the author mostly through that passage is anger, you can answer a lot of questions that follow based on this understanding of what is driving the author to write this passage. So whenever you see a RC passage like this, which is written full of opinions, full of like a tone which does not hold back as such, you have to let the emotions of the author or the opinions of the author guide you in choosing the question in the right option as such. Now let's go to the next RC. This I feel was a very easy RC. Very easy RC. Everybody who attempted it, most of them, it's like there was a 50% accuracy rate for this particular RC. So that's like a RC which is generally on a very easy side. So in such RCs, always remember that when you see an RC where the questions appear on the shorter side, the passage itself appears objective description, informative RC, you should never leave, because informative RCs tend to be easier to answer, less subjective to answer, because you can't argue with information. With opinions you can argue that, okay, would the author agree with this, would the author not agree with this, what would make his argument stronger, what would make his arguments weaker. All such questions are subjective in nature. But when you have an informative RC, things become a lot more clearer, which means your job as the paper taker becomes easier. So you should never leave RCs like this. You should never pass upon RCs like this. Also the passage was easy to read, and two of the questions were not inference based, they were direct objective questions. So those you should have definitely attempted and gotten right. So if you see that, okay, I have gotten those questions wrong, you should check on your ability to read information properly, because in informative RC it's just basically reading quickly and understanding it properly and going to the objective questions. So if you got those two objective questions wrong, The thing that you should look at is that am I reading properly? When I'm reading, I should probably slow down so that I don't miss key information or misunderstand information. If you got those two right and the inference based ones wrong, still I would say that this is the kind of RC you should not make mistakes in. So you should definitely, if you're not if you're making mistakes in this kind of an RC, you need to tend to like slow down, look at how you're solving and try to improve the accuracy. This is something that you should not have made a mistake on. Now let's take a look at the next RC, which is about overvaluing work. This was a slightly difficult RC. The reason it was difficult was that the passage was not easy to read. The passage was not very difficult to read. You see a lot of the passages like this in actual CAT exam also. I would say that it's difficult to read. It's not philosophy or it's not religion or it's not old text, but each line was an argument. Each line was structured like an argument. You had to like slow down and understand each line's implication, and when you have passages like that, it becomes very difficult to remember all the arguments. So it's not easy, but it's not, you don't have to remember every argument. In such kind of this, you should have basically remembered that what is the overall point that the author wants to make, because the passage was a persuasive passage. The author did not want people to work as much as they did not want public policy to encourage more work. So if you understood that, you would then be able to say, okay, I read this passage, everything in this passage is basically an argument against like public policy supporting work, or everything in this passage basically means that public policy is geared towards supporting work. So when you see understand the persuasive tone, understand what the author is trying to do, it becomes easier to read. Without actually thinking what is the author trying to do, it becomes a harder read, because you have to then remember every single argument the author is making. And the author was scientific in his tone, he was logical in his thinking. So every paragraph was full of information and evidence and supporting reason and logic. Those things are difficult to remember. Don't try to remember or memorize each argument. Understand just basically what is the author trying to say through the paragraph. He's trying to say that the public policy is unfairly geared towards making people work. Just learn that paragraph, not the points. Don't remember the argument or evidence that he gave in support of that. Just remember this one point, because then it is easier for you to actually go through the passage and then go to the questions as such. So always remember in RCs like this, passages like this which have a persuasive tone, scientific language, and basically where it is full of reasons, logic and evidence, don't remember the details, remember the author's objective. Now let's go to the, also one more thing that you should remember here, even if you did not get the entire RC right, the RC was on a difficult side, there was one easy question within the RC which should not have been missed. There were 3 inference based questions, 1 objective question, which of the following is, it was basically which of the following is not given in the passage. Now that is an objective question, basically it just checks whether you read the passage or not. That kind of question you should not miss, that kind of question you should not get wrong. So remember that easy question, if you got wrong, you have to be more careful in your reading. If you got the inference based questions wrong, then you have to work more on your reasoning and critical reasoning skills. But if you got the easy objective question wrong, then there is basically something that you have to work harder on concentration while reading. That's the thing that you have to remember. Now let's take a look at the last RC passage that we had, which was on Buddhism. See, the issue with the Buddhism passage was that it was not a difficult read as such, but the author was not very clear in the point he was making. He was not giving conclusive statements. Okay, this is why you should do that, or that is why. There were very few connectors. He had a rambling tone. So when you have something like that, even though it is easy to read, it is difficult to summarize, because you can't understand what is the author driving at, because he is driving at it at a very slow pace. He is giving a lot of information but not really arriving at a single point as such. So though that kind of RCs generally frustrate the reader, it frustrates me also. So unless you are going in with the mindset that I am reading a book, it would be difficult to read that kind of essay, because you will be like, what is the author trying to say? Unlike like say essays or like opinion articles, where the author is knows that he has like 500 words and he has to make several points in those 500 words. This was basically driving at it at a leisurely pace, which would be difficult for you to understand what is the author trying to say. But essentially, if you understood that the author was trying to highlight the importance of reincarnation. Everything in that passage essentially drives to that point without him actually making that point. Once you understood that, it became easier for you to answer all questions related to that particular topic. So it was basically a informative RC where the author was trying to make a point, basically like make an overarching point as such, but he did not explicitly make it, which meant that you had to infer that, and once you inferred that, all the questions would become easier, because then you would understand the purpose, the motivation of the author in writing the passage. There were 3 inference based questions here and 1 objective question. See, remember, in subjective passages, understanding what is the author trying to do is very, very important. This was an informative passage, but also subjective in what information he shared with you. He was not sharing information basically contrary to the viewpoint as such. Everything in the passage was driving his particular viewpoint, but his viewpoint was not explicitly stated. That's the only issue that was over there. So basically you had to infer the viewpoint and then you can proceed with the answers as such. So this is something that you should remember in passages like this. Now let's go to the para-jumbles. See, the para-jumbles were, there was one easy para-jumble which was on processor speed, should have been done. There were 2 clear mandatory pairs in that para-jumble, which itself would increase your chance of getting it right to 50-50. So that is something that you should have definitely got right. The scientific research one was hard. Why was it hard? For many people who find para-jumbles like that hard, they might be wondering why is it hard. See, basically the issue with that particular para-jumble was that there were too many independent sentences. So if out of 4 sentences, 3 are independent sentences, you don't know where to begin. And once you don't know where to begin, it becomes difficult for you to unscramble the paragraph. If you know the starting sentence, it becomes much easier. But without knowing a clear starting sentence, it becomes much harder as such. So in that kind of a scenario, you have to understand the thought, the chain of thought as such. Unless you have the chain of thought, it becomes difficult to unscramble that particular para-jumble. Same was the case with actually English proficiency, or essentially language discordance, that was mentioned. Again, over there were 2 independent sentences, so which could have actually acted as starting sentences. But in that case, if you understood the chain of thought that the author is trying to make a scientific paragraph, highlight a problem, give the reasons for the problem and the impact of the problem, it would become easier for you to unscramble. Always remember, in scientific paragraphs, most scientists write in a particular way. Tell what the problem is, give the reason why that problem occurs, give the impact of the problem. When they generally follow this because it is easier and a more logical way of ordering sentences. So even if you don't get grammar clues, or you don't get like connecting connector phrases and all, always remember that in scientific or in a logical argument, you would introduce what your argument is, give the supporting details, then give the conclusion. In a problem, you would tell what the problem is, give the reasons why that problem occurs, and give the impact of the problem. This is a logical way of ordering a scientific paragraph. So now that you understand the para-jumbles, let's take a look at the OOCs. The innovation economic theory one was super easy. A lot of people tripped up on it, I don't know why exactly, but it was a very easy OOC para-jumble. Why was it easy? Because if you understand the economic argument, you would know that one of them is contrary to the economic argument that is the rest of the 4 are making. Once you realize that, okay, 4 sentences are making a economic argument A, 1 sentence is making economic argument B, it becomes very obvious that which is the contrary sentence. You need not understand the order of the sentences to understand that they are making one particular economic argument while the other is making a contrasting economic argument. The diabetes and the brain one was hard. The diabetes and the brain one was hard because generally when you get a sentence, if the OOC sentence is a generic sentence or an introductory sentence, it becomes harder to spot. That was the only reason why it was hard. Also, I think the sentence where it is the risk of it is higher or something like that, I think many people marked that as the answer because they felt that it did not mesh with any of the given other sentences, except the word risk was there in another sentence. So it did mesh with the other sentences. So be very careful whenever a specific pronoun or a specific word, this risk, when you have something like this, you have to look for its antecedent very carefully. This risk is higher if it is given, then you have to carefully look for its antecedent. Do not mark off without checking each sentence for the word risk. So always be very careful in those kind of sentences. So let's take a last, we'll come to para summary. There were two easy para summaries. Basically, if you spent a lot of time doing para jumbles and OOC and missed on para summaries, you missed on two pretty easy para summaries. So the Pygmalion effect para summary was medium to easy, not very easy, it was medium to easy, but it was a topic that many of us know very well. The topic of rising to expectations and falling to low expectations. So it was a paragraph that was easy to read. Again, it was basically a concept that was easy to read, and once you understood the concept through personal experience, understanding which option matches with it was also easy to check. The reality one, basically the reality map, navigation map, the paragraph was not easy to read, but the options were very easy. The options were so divergent as such that it was very easy to pick the right option as such. The externalities was not easy, it was hard. The reason why it was hard is basically it had a lot of information in one paragraph. To summarize a paragraph which has a lot of information is always difficult. So in that case, basically you didn't know which points were necessary, which points were extra details. That was the only reason I feel that many people struggled with it. But in such kind of cases, always pick the more general arguments, the more general or characteristic descriptions. So for example, if like say a disease is being described, okay, if you have a scientific paragraph where a disease is being described, that say this disease cause inflammation of your arm, it is very painful, whatever etc is given. Basically whatever is very characteristic of the disease must be there in the para summary. So basically what is absolutely characteristic of this disease? Absolutely characteristic is that it is on the arm, that it causes XYZ. Anything which is very specific and characteristic has to be there. So whenever you have a scientific paragraph where a lot of information is mentioned about a phenomenon, issue, a problem, anything that is super characteristic of that problem, identifying that particular problem, that should be there in the para summary. Always remember that. So this is basically the verbal section. It was an easy section, should have scored well in this particular section. I feel that on the whole this particular verbal section would give you an idea of where your issues lie, because if you are failing to do the easier questions, particularly if you see the easiest questions that are given over here, if you fail to do the easy questions, then either you are reading too fast, you are reading without concentration, or you are missing out on easy VA questions. So all of these three things you should keep in mind if you are missing out on the easy questions. So this was the verbal analysis. Thank you for tuning in. Hi friends, welcome to Crack Course video series. In this particular video, we'll discuss the LRDI section of the DashCat DC8 as such. So let's get started. Firstly, I'll discuss the 4 question sets, then I'll come to the 6 question sets. See, generally you have 2 options. Depending on how you generally score in DILRs, you should adopt the strategy accordingly. I'll discuss strategy at the very end after discussing the sets, what should have been the strategy. But let's first start by taking a look at the sets in general. So the first set I'll discuss is the one with coins with weights and balances. This is basically a kind of a formula based set or a concept based set. If you knew the concept, you would be able to answer all the questions pretty quickly. Essentially after solving the first question also, even if you don't remember the concept or even if you don't remember any formulas related to it, after the first question you would find all the remaining questions fairly simple to solve or easy to solve as such. So it basically it's a conceptual this. If you knew how to solve this particular puzzle, you would be able to do it. Otherwise you would struggle and end up losing a lot of time as such. So these kind of sets you should only attempt if you know the underlying concept. Even like picking coins kind of puzzles, these have basic formulas. If you know the formula, it becomes trivially easy. If you try to think of the formula and if you try to think of the way to answer these questions in the actual exam, you will end up wasting a lot of time. If you knew the particular formula or how to actually go about it, not just formula but how to go about it, this entire set could be done in under 10 minutes. So this is something that you should have definitely solved had you known how to do it. Let's take a look at the second set, which is the Spider-Man 2D LR set. So in this 2D LR set, this is similar to what we had seen in 2D LRs, where basically we get 4 questions, of which 3 can be answered if you do one 2D representation. So what do I mean by 2D representation? That is, you have one 2D diagram, you have to convert this to another 2D diagram, and once you solve or create this 2D diagram, then all the questions, or at least a majority of the questions, can be solved using this 2D diagram. And one question is easy anyway, so even if you don't actually solve the entire set, one set question was a sitter anyway. So basically the first question was a sitter which you could have solved without drawing this diagram, and the remaining 3 questions could have been solved after drawing this one diagram. So always in these kind of whenever you see a 2D LR, first read this and see all the questions. How many diagrams do I need to actually draw? How many representations do I need to draw to actually do this set? If it's only one representation, then definitely do the set. It will take you not more than 5-6 minutes to actually do that. There you just have to be very careful in considering all the cases. I think 5-6 if you are very fast, but if you are on the careful side, it would take you 7-8 minutes to draw the diagram. So definitely something that you can do easily for the remaining 3 questions. Even if you weren't able to do it in the first go, you should have definitely done the first question of this set. So even in these sets, remember there will be like this one individual question which will be a sitter. So if you see 2D space LR, see how many questions require how many representations, and if there is a sitter question, do it there and then itself. It would be very easy also to do. So all of these kind of 2D LR sets, always keep that in mind. The third is the shoot them all. This was a difficult one to do because each question had to be solved individually. Each question you had to calculate and you had to consider the number of cases. Also the paragraph, like the set length was this much. So if you had started looking at the set, at there only most people would have left, because this is like a 5 paragraph setup. Reading those 5 paragraph itself would have taken you 3 minutes as such. So you're already 3 minutes in. But the set was not difficult. After you solved the first question, you understood that there was a pattern that was going on. So once you spot the pattern, the remaining questions become easier. It is something that you can do under 10 minutes, but in generally when you see a setup only which is that big, it is kind of daunting. But in the setup itself, there was an explained example, where that example was taking up 1 paragraph, so the actual set was not that difficult as such. So remember, in these kind of things, firstly enumeration of cases takes time. If you have a very long setup, it also takes time. And just see the questions once. If there are any repetitive questions in this, the last 2 questions were had the same setup, but 1, 2 and 3 had different setups. So you had to actually solve for 3 different setups. So compared to the other 4 questions, this would have taken you the most amount of time. So if you had to pick between the 4 question puzzles, I would not have picked this one. I would have picked the coins one and the 2D space LR before I picked this one. Just by the on the basis of how much time it would have taken for me to read and consider all cases as such. Essentially consider the draw each answer individually, write down how it is moving. All of that is going to take up time. So because of that, it is very apparent from the first read onwards, this is going to be on the lengthier side. So I would have kept this after for like the 4th or 5th set I would solve, not the 1st or 2nd set I would solve in this case. So once you actually read the set and once you got the first question right, the remaining questions would have been very quick to do. So even though it is solved individually, the first question would have taken you time, second question would have taken you some time, not as much time actually, it would have taken you like a minute or so. Third and fourth questions could be done together and would have taken you another 2 minutes or 3 minutes or so. So the remaining solutions would have been quick. Now let's go to the 6 question sets. The 6 question sets are the ones that are going to make or break your LR attempt. So in 6 question sets, there were 2 sets. There was one especially painful set which was on Venn diagrams maxima minima. These kind of sets you have to be very careful, because essentially these sets are very dangerous because they are very lengthy and deceptively so. The setup was this much, but if you see the solution, it would have taken you a lot of time to consider all the cases, all the conditions, and actually find out the maxima and minima. So be very very careful of a 6 setter which has this much setup. You have to be very careful of it, because that kind of setup is basically leading you into a trap. This is a huge time trap. Even Maruti, who explained this particular set, took 40 minutes to solve that set, because it is just that difficult, it is that complicated. It is you will be able to solve the first 2 questions easily, but the remaining 4 questions would require a lot of thinking and a lot of time. So I would suggest not to attempt these questions first. See, ideally what you should do is you should attempt the other 6 question set and in the end if you have like 2 minutes left or 3 minutes left, you should try to do the first two questions, because the first two questions are independent. Each of these had to be individually attempted, and the first two questions were independent questions, and that could have been done without actually solving the entire set. Those two questions could have been done in 2 minutes, and that would mean that 2 minutes, two additional questions you would have gotten right. So all of these things you should keep in mind when you see a 6-setter set where 4 questions require a lot of time, 2 questions are easy. Just leave that set for the very end. Do those 2 questions in the very end. This should not have been attempted in the first go. It was a very difficult set. Should time trap not to do it in the first go. We saw this in CAT 2020 also. In the second slot there was one horrible time trap. Anybody who actually attempted that one would have been stuck, pretty terribly stuck in that LRDI section. So always remember, in 6 question sets, if you find something which is taking too much time, you have fallen into a time trap. Be very careful of picking the 6 question set. The 6 question set can easily take all of your 40 minutes. Do not fall into that trap. The second question, 6 question set over here, was games and tournaments. It would also have required some amount of time to solve. But once you solve that entire set, okay, this is enumeration of cases, you'd have to enumerate all the cases of like the goals with the results, etc. But once you did that, all 6 questions could be done in one go. These kind of sets you should always attempt 6 question sets, because you put in 15 minutes, you get all the questions, and then you can go to the next this. If you have to solve each question individually, if each question becomes like 5 minutes to solve, you will be losing 30 minutes in a 6 question set itself. So always when you're picking the 6 question set, try to pick one where you can answer all the questions in one go. Now basically I'll discuss strategy over here. See, basically you have 2 6 questions and 4 question sets. A good attempt, see, around 95 percentile, if you get even all 3 4 questions right, you'd be about 95 percentile SO. But it is kind of risky, because especially if like the LRDI section is very easy, these 12 questions might not be enough. Especially if you get one of these 12 questions wrong, it might not be enough. You would be on the very edge as such, and you will be very nervous. So a better strategy is try to go for 6 plus 4 plus 4. So you are more comfortably crossing the 95 percentile threshold. So that would be what I think is a better or safer strategy as far as CAT is concerned. 6 plus 4 plus 4 is okay. You will be crossing the threshold as such. So if you have 6 plus 4 plus 4, always try to pick, make sure that the 6 question set that you do not pick, don't pick the time trap. Try to do the 2 4 questions, so you have some this going, then go to the 6 question set. If you still have time, then you can go to the 3rd 4th question set. So basically what I do is I do the 4 questions, 2 4 questions first, then I go to the 6 question set, because if I don't go now, I won't be able to go at all. So then I go to the 6 question set, so that I have like 14 questions done. Then I have a choice of either going to the 4 question set. If I have enough time, I will go and try to solve the remaining 4 question set completely, or I can try to do like 2 questions out of the 6 question set. So over here in that 6 question set, you could do those 2 questions easily, right? So you can then go and try to do those 2 question sets. So you will get up to like 16 questions. So 16 to 18 questions would be a very good attempt as such. So that would be basically what you should target in these kind of this. Have that strategy. Pick the 2 4 question sets you are most comfortable with. Do them first, do them correct. Then go to the 6 question set. After that, depending on how much time you have left, either try to solve the individually answered 6 question set, some questions from the individually answered 6 question set, or go and try to solve the entire 4 question set completely. Also always remember, take a couple of minutes at the start of the section to read and understand each LRDI set. Basically, you need not read all the rules. You should understand what the set is. Is it a games and tournament set? How big is the set? Are the questions solved individually? Are they solved together? Is this a enumeration set? How many cases are likely to be? Are the questions solved in one go, or are they solved one after other? You should know exactly what each set is. You just go through all the sets, and then you decide on which 2 sets to pick first, which 6-setter question to pick next, etc. So prepare this, spend a minute or 2 minutes at the start to actually do that. That will hold you in good regard in terms of not falling for a time trap and efficiently allocating your time as such. So this is basically what I would suggest should have been your strategy attempting this particular LRDI section. This was not an easy section. Basically, there is a very good chance that you could have done only 8 questions as such. Even good students only attempted 8 questions. So if you were able to attempt more than that, this would have been a very good attempt. But in that case, basically just remember that this kind of set can be made or break, like you can make it or break it depending on which 6 question set you choose. The wrong 6 question set would completely break your section as such. So that's the only thing you should remember from this experience as such. So thank you for tuning in.
Hi friends, my name is Maruti and I'm the co-founder of Krakow. In this video, we'll be looking at the mock analysis for DashCat 8. Many students have taken this test. If you haven't taken this test, please go ahead, take the mock and then watch this video. We'll be looking at the relative difficulty level of all the 3 sections, verbal, LRDI and quant. We'll also be looking at what will be the expected percentiles for say 90 percentile and 99 percentile for all the 3 sections. In the quant section, there were 26 questions and the time limit was 40 minutes. Out of these 26 questions, 20 questions were MCQs and 6 questions were TITA questions, that is type in the answer questions. The overall difficulty level of this section, in my opinion, is slightly difficult. It was from medium to difficult. Although we have taken care to ensure that there were at least a few questions which were very simple questions. I remember a few questions in say geometry, profit and loss, one question in number systems, which I think people, if they know the basics, they will definitely get it correct. In general, I think on an average, around 6 questions can be answered by students who have just started their preparation. If they know the particular topic, it is a very simple question. So I think there are at least 6 questions which are fairly straightforward. There was also one more thing that we have tried to do in this section. What we wanted to do was induce students to commit silly mistakes. So for example, if the entire question, the data in the question was given in hours, we asked them to enter the answer in minutes. Sometimes we gave the entire data in lakhs, but we wanted to enter them without lakhs. So there were some questions that we have done that way, where a student who is not paying attention would probably commit silly mistakes. This was mostly the case in some of the TITA questions. We felt that this will be a good lesson for students so that they won't commit this kind of a mistake in the actual examination. If you're looking at the question distribution according to different topics, this is what we expect to happen in the examination. The important topics are averages, ratio and proportion, profit and loss, time and distance. Similarly, even functions, inequalities, linear equations, quadratic equations. These I think are the more important topics. Even geometry I think is an important topic. And what we have done is at least try to put one very simple question in each of the topics. There was one question in geometry, for example, which involved circles, which should definitely have been answered if somebody is not very scared of geometry. Similarly, there were some questions, one question in profit and loss, which I think is very, very straightforward. There was one question in number systems, which involved the number of zeros at the end of a factorial. Again, these are questions that are just simple application of basics. These are questions that should be answered. Like I've said earlier, there are at least 6 to 7 questions which are fairly easy. Anybody who has just read the topic or just read the concept and understood the concept will be able to answer these kind of questions. There were also some questions which involved a lot of calculations. That is, you have to look at a large number of cases. This was particularly true in one question in inequalities where even though it looks very simple, I think it's a very simple inequality, but you have to look at multiple cases. So the chance of somebody committing a mistake is also quite high. Other than that, I think the overall difficulty is slightly on the medium to difficult side. There were 6 to 7 questions which are very easy. Like there was another very easy question in progressions. I think a common question that is asked in progressions is if you are given 2 arithmetic progressions and you are asked to calculate the number of common terms. One such question is there. Again, somebody who knows the concept of finding out the common terms between 2 arithmetic progressions will definitely get this question correct. So if you remove these 6 to 7 very easy questions, I think the remaining around 20 questions were definitely on the more slightly medium to difficult side. In my opinion, the 90 percentile mark for a paper of this difficulty level will be around 25 marks. Similarly, the 99 percentile mark I think will be around 45 marks.